you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. We're going to have a great discussion. We're going to stay a little bit more on manipulation right now because I'm actually working on a book. And as I'm writing the book, there's things that I discover along the way that I want to share. I want to get some input, some insight. But I'm also very curious to see what the audience thinks of what we're adding to the table because it's like a new discovery. So today we're going to be talking about what the motive is behind manipulation. Now, it is something I discovered as I'm writing the book, so I'm hoping that we're all on the same page. And of course, I'm going to have Connie to share her thoughts. Connie, what's up?
Hello. Connie Alleyne here, founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy and podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall. I am looking forward to our discussion because it is a different, I guess, twist to manipulation, especially the way we probably were taught earlier on in our careers.
Yeah, I think it's a very good approach. I think it'll be fun for a quick dialogue. I'm going to tell you how my thoughts came about, and then we'll go ahead and explore it. Now, mind you, this is not scripted, so we have no idea where we're going to go. I don't even know if Connie freaking agrees with me at this point. But whatever, we'll figure it out. But I think you may. We'll see. But anyway, guys, the show Tier Talks for you brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor. When we come back, we're going to talk about the generalized motive behind inmate manipulation. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems. Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. All right, and we're back. All right, so real quick, Connie, I'm trying to follow in your footsteps. Connie decides to text me one day and says, hey, Gange, my book is almost done. It's in the hands of the publisher. And I felt great for her, and I was also jealous, I'll be honest, because I want to have a book. I want to have a book, Connie, I do. And I'm making an effort. It really did motivate me for you to complete something. And I'm like, you know what? I want to do it too. You know, we both could be authors. Why not? You know, and I got a chance to read some of your book. I think it's phenomenal. It got my interest right away. And just like you, I mean, you're writing as you speak. So I think that's a gift in itself. And I was like, you know what? I want to try my hands on something, but I also want to make this as a discovery for me. So as I'm writing it, you know, I'm really asking myself questions to bring about something maybe new. So it's not me reiterating the same material. And the problem here is that the way I teach manipulation, I don't really have anybody I can lean on because I've kind of developed my own discoveries. You know, I'm using theories that have never been applied to corrections. So in this case here, I don't know if it was me taking a shortcut, but when we were talking about inmate manipulation, someone says, well, what do you think the motive is behind inmate manipulation? I said, well, that's a great question, right? So at first, I wanted to say that the motive varies depending on who is targeted, right? I mean, and that could be all day. I mean, if I'm an inmate and I'm going to choose a social service provider, that may be different than me choosing someone from custody, whatever I don't know eventually what the end game is, but it could be something like as simple as cutting me, pushing me on top of the list for a wait for a program, or for custody, let me go visit my man in another cell. Again, but is the motive really that, or is that just the outcome? So I got to thinking, I was like, you know what, guys, just to keep these general, because again, there's so many requests that can come your way, so many specific requests, that's hard for me to sit there and say, have a defense for each request that can come your way. However it's fashioned, it's hard. So how do I make it a little bit more simple? So what I thought of immediately was, it's not so much about that specific request. It's not the outcome, but rather the motive is just simple. And it's going to apply to no matter who they choose to target. Doesn't matter what their role is in the profession. The motive, the foundation for any game to be played is control. That's exactly what it is. And that can carry across no matter who's their target, no matter what department they represent, no matter what request they're looking to achieve. It's the fact that I'm an inmate and my motive is I want to control you. I want you to make my life a little bit easier. I'm tired of being told when to sleep, when to eat, whatever it is. I think that if I could just have a level of control over the person that controls me, I then get a level of control over myself. So what's your thoughts? Do you think, real quick, that the motive of control is different than the outcome? Like, yes, they're related. Don't get me wrong. I do agree that they're related, but the outcome is not the motive.
So I think the motive, so I follow your train of thought in the beginning as far as like, the outcomes are the outcomes, and ultimately, the motivation could vary based on, who the target is and sort of what they're looking to get at the end. But when you think about it a bit more deeply, you have to think, what is it that the inmate does not have behind the wall? And control is that thing. They're told every day when to get up, when to go to bed, when to eat, when to go to school, when to go to medical, when to go to court. So like all these things that they have no control over, I could definitely see that the motive is gaining control. I also think, though, there are some inmates who may just enjoy the ability to conquer something, to conquer someone, to get us to break the rules, right? If I could somehow get you to break the rules, yes, I think the foundation of that is I've gained control over you, but I've also now gotten you to do something that you shouldn't be doing. And I think certainly that's a really big thing with many of the inmates who want to be in control of their environment, or maybe even the people around them. Because you do have a lot of inmates that are playing chess and not checkers.
I'll be honest with you, when you first started speaking, I was like, oh, where's she going? Because if I have to rewrite this chapter one more time, because I was so waiting for like a blah, blah, blah. But you're fucking wrong, Gange. I'm going to go but actually it was great. And I want to mention something. You mentioned a couple of things. So you're right. Like, even if it is for breaking a rule, the motive is to control, to get that person to break the rule. You mentioned something great to me the other day. Now, this first chapter is hard because I'm introducing thoughts, right? And I know exactly where I want to go when the meat and potatoes gets to it, but I also have to try to get people to be interested in the topic. And sometimes you don't realize that when you go to write something that your perspective isn't really 101. It's not like, hey, Gange, when you're talking, you really have to have someone that has an understanding of the profession, because right now, you're all over here, and they're going to drop the book already. You're already limiting your audience. And when you told that to me, when you said that to me, I was like, okay, you know what? You're 100% correct. But I also want people that when they see this, and I also, again, just from the video here, because your insight was phenomenal, is that I want people to realize that it can happen to them. So right off the bat, the reason why I'm also pushing away from the outcome, that it's not just about the outcome, because if we focus on the outcome, we're just going to say, well, that can't happen to us. I'm never going to bring in drugs. I'm never going to bring in a cell phone, whatever. So you ignore the process. So I wrote, actually, I have something here, but I could just verbatim. It's not going to be verbatim, just kind of like a quick little summary. But basically, it's like so many people get focused on the outcome that they minimize the complexity of the game, but they also push aside the most important part. I'm looking for control. So if you're only looking at the outcome, you're showing no respect to, oh, hold on. You saw that door open. You want to say hi? It's live. We're having a show, but you can say live. I'm not going to edit it out.
Hi.
Can you hear her?
Hi.
Okay, I'm doing a show, so say it's good. You got a couple of things in your mouth there.
I can hear you.
I know, because I have the headset. And she actually didn't say, here, hold on, Con. Go ahead. Can you say
Hi,
anything?
Sienna.
Ah, there you go. She's smiling off screen. Hopefully we still have our subscribers. So, yeah, sorry. Hey, can we shut that door? Hey, can we shut that door, please? She's 3. She ain't going to listen. Hold on. All right. Yeah, that went backwards. I'll get the wife on that one. First layer of defense went right through it. But the thing is, they when they minimize the complexity of the game, I think it's because they only see the outcome. They only see what the end result is going to be, and they ignore the process. So before I go into the process, which will be later, I wanted to mention to people that it really is control. Now, it's complex in how they get the control, but it's simple to know that it is a level of control that they want over staff. And like you mentioned before, I want control of my life. The only way I'm going to get it is by controlling the staff who oversee me. And I think ultimately, no matter what the end result may be, whatever the outcome is, the foundation is that inmate wants to have that level of control over staff. Now, one of the things I want to toss your way, because again, I'm trying to elaborate a little bit more, but not go too much because we're going to cover it as the book goes. But, and again, I want people's thoughts on this because I'm discovering it along the way. But I think, believe it or not, if you're just focused on the outcome, and follow me on this, Connie, because I know I'm coming to a thought here. When you're just focused on the outcome, and there could be so many different requests that come your way, it may be hard sometimes to realize what requests are really, a game that's going to be played eventually, or what requests are legit. Because don't forget, these initial requests are really the door, they're the gateway. So you're not really going to notice, maybe something that seems to be superficial right away. So how do you recognize something that seems to be a little bit deeper than what that request actually is? And I think the best way to say that is when you start feeling that you're losing a sense of control. So like, if I start feeling that my behaviors are in conflict with my belief, then maybe I am starting to lose a sense of who I am. But it really requires me to have insight into myself, because this is not surface. This is not something where inmate's going to come up and say, hey, do this because I want to control you. It's going to be you yourself are going to have to know that, hey, something doesn't feel right. And I actually think that the extremes of our job, think about this as I mention this. The extremes of our job is that we have to have control all the time. That's at the highest level, right? So you should be able to recognize any shift when you lose that level of control, right? Because you're at the extreme. I need this level of control. So anytime that you feel that you're subordinate to an inmate, or that behavior that they're getting you to commit to just is in conflict, that little shift, however small, you have to notice it. It's the surface. It's under the surface that you have to recognize right away. So am I making sense at all?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think of, you get tons. I used to get tons of inmate requests. Can I get this? Can I get that? Can you consider me for this, that, the third, whatever? And so I think a way that, I had to remind myself is, if it happened to be a name that was familiar to me, and all of a sudden I'm doing something that I wouldn't have normally done for any other request that I got, right? Like if for some reason now I'm reaching out to my psychiatrist to say, hey, can we talk about this person? Or if I'm reaching out to, I don't know, custody to say, hey, you think this person could get a job? Like that's not within my prescribed role. And so I think it's being able to identify when you are starting to take actions that are not in alignment with what you would do for everyone else. And, not in the space of, this is my friend from the street, and so I'm trying to help them out. But there are some times where, we've had multiple team meetings about this particular inmate. And now I'm thinking maybe this thing would be helpful if they got this, because I know all the other stuff. But I'm not necessarily thinking they could be asking me for this because they know we've had multiple team meetings about them. And I think you have to be able to distinguish where there is that conflict and where there is that shift, that you can say like, okay, this is different when I think this is good for treatment versus the inmate's kind of nudging me in that direction by sending me this letter.
Yeah, that's great. I love that, because you're right. And that actually starts with you asking certain questions about what's being asked of you. So like, again, exactly what you're saying, just to compliment it a little bit, is why am I doing it? What does the inmate hope to benefit from that? But I think one of the more important questions, there's a few, it's not all inclusive, but how do I feel about doing it? Correct? Is that an important question to ask yourself?
Absolutely. Because if you feel uncomfortable, or if you feel like this is not something I would normally do, I think we're not really vulnerable openly, especially depending on what level you are in leadership. You may feel uncomfortable reaching out to someone else to ask them, do they think what, or, ask them their opinion about something, as opposed to, this don't feel so right, maybe I should not do this thing, whatever that thing is. And I think the more that we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with our colleagues, it's the way we kind of help keep each other safe. Like if I came to you and I was like, hey, Ganj, I got this request, this is what they're asking. I think it's a telltale sign that I came to you to ask you a question. And so we have to be able to start reading each other. Like you would need to say, well, Connie, I'm curious, you don't run all these requests by me. Why would you run this one by me? And I have to be willing to say, hey, so, I worked with this inmate when he was or she was working in the medical unit. And, I thought that they were a great worker, right? No matter what, when I got that note, I'm not the first person that should receive the note. So the fact that the note may have come to me is already an issue. And then I'm taking it a step further to ask someone for their insight, because clearly I'm questioning my own insights. So I think we have to really be able to dig deep and understand that, yes, manipulation, there's an entire process. And I think a lot of times we ignore those telltale signs that there's a process happening to us.
Well, you're right. Control is a feeling. So I think yes, we have to know it in ourselves, but sometimes we may leak certain things that maybe our partner knows isn't us. Like, hey, why are you doing this today? You've never done this before. Or something that breaks away from some level of consistency that they expect from us. And I actually thought about that just now. Maybe that's something I'll definitely have to put in, because I think that's a good sign too, by the way. And there's something else I want to explore, but real quick, as we're having the dialogue, this was great about having this dialogue, is that I think when you're under some level of control, even if you're having trouble really seeing it because it's not surface, there may be a level of consistency that you're used to that you may get the conflict when you start to break away. So the conflict could be coming from the fact that you're subconsciously, you're realizing you're breaking away from something consistent, whether it's your belief or whether it's an action. So recognize that. And, and I think it could come from, again, something as strong as that level of consistency in how you do your work or how the work's performed. Now, one other thing before we go, I wanted to try to keep this dialogue quick. I think we're getting better at it. It's mostly me, because I think what I have to say is very important. And then, whatever. But one last thing is, people that choose to manipulate. Now, again, we're talking about control. So obviously we know right now we're telling you, protect it. Don't just allow yourself to be controlled. Protect that. That's something you want to have universal precaution with. Don't let anybody try to take you down a path that you feel uncomfortable with. But I want to go one level up, and I want to talk about policies and procedures and management. Please be advised that the stuff that you put in play, like those policies and procedures, can easily be manipulated to the point where staff has no control at all. Again, there's just nothing they could do about it, and it's horrible because, we're giving out all this training on how to have the insight and how to recognize and what to feel. But at the end, you still have these policies that are just so predictable in nature, and the inmates know it, and they could play us out. So the point is, even though we can do our best to avoid manipulation on our own, you're putting me in a situation where I can't. And the inmates will be aware of that. Like, if I can't get to Connie because, man, she knows her stuff. She feels conflict. She's, but you know what? I know Connie's got to do this if I do this. So again, if it's not the inmate getting it right from you, they could get it right from the policies and procedures, or in short, also your authority figures. Obviously, that's what I'm really coming at. But talking about policy and procedures. So would you agree, like, as much as you want to teach people how to avoid that level of control from an inmate trying to manipulate that, you also have to be careful of the policies and procedures that just give it to them?
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's certainly policies that can drive. I mean, we know that our policies and procedures drive our actions, right? And so depending on how long an inmate has been there, they may know here's the appropriate way they're supposed to respond when this thing happens, right? So, I can use medical as an example. You have an inmate who knows, if I say chest pain, this is what's going to happen. I want to have access to someone, whoever that someone is. I know that is the person who is on triage today, or I know that is the treatment nurse today. So if I trigger the alarm by saying chest pain, I know that I'll make it to the clinic, and then I'll have access to that particular person, and there will be no officer in the room because it's a confidential interaction between me and that nurse. And so, I think when you consider the policies and procedures in place, there are certainly ways that when they learn the system and they truly have targeted someone, they will learn how to use those same procedures to, maneuver and continue with their game, whatever that game is.
Right. And I want to add, before we come to a close, that the reason why I actually separated the motive, which is control, from the outcome, is maybe sometimes it's not really about a specific outcome. Maybe it's about the fact that I can test you to see what you're willing to do, or I can laugh with my peers as I have you running amok. So if we always focus on the outcome, it's true, though, give you false information, you're gullible, you're not validating it, and we're watching you as you run around. So the funny thing is maybe it's not so much, again, about the outcome, the specifics of the outcome, that we really shouldn't focus so much on that as much as we should really focus on the fact that there's a level of control. Let that be the foundation to understand where it is the inmate's trying to take me to. Because, again, just saying it one more time, maybe there's not an outcome. Maybe it's just, I want to see what it is that you're willing to do. So I'm not going to specifically have even a request. I may just say something just to see if you do it, and I think, honestly, I really like the fact that control is just a generalized way of saying this is the motive. This is what it is that they're trying to do. And I think it helps us no matter what position we're in. Because remember, if I went with every specific request, it would be very hard for me to get somebody to defend each specific request, because it's infinite. But what is the request about? I want to control that staff. Okay, now let's talk about that. And maybe we could see what we could do to recognize that feeling and go ahead and put whatever shield up. Now, you're smiling a lot today. I could see it. I don't know if anybody could see it, which is great. I'm glad you're in a good mood, but is it at my expense?
It is not at your expense. I'm just, thinking about some of the experiences that, you have, where I've had, where inmates had really tried to manipulate the situation. And, I think that's when it really matters that we have a good relationship with custody, because there's times where there are things that I think I know something, or I think I saw something, but I'm not sure. But then I can go to custody and say, hey, listen, this is a little weird to me. What are your thoughts about that? Or, can you look into something and see if this is, something of concern or not? And I feel like those are the times where we safeguard each other, and we make sure that although we know this is a game, we know that maybe in this same process, the offender is just going to change tact, right? Because they learn. They're almost, I don't want to say like artificial intelligence, but they have those
They evolve.
exams, those exams that get smarter as you take the exam, the questions start to get harder. And so I feel like a lot of them who've had time to really cultivate their game, they start to evolve. And so if we aren't on top of our stuff and we're not looking out for each other, I think we could certainly end up in a bad situation.
Before we come to a close, you mentioned something great when we talked about evolution. When I started to teach gangs, I did a lot of stuff about gangs. I started noticing that, man, these tats that they can have, there's just so many, so specific, but I also noticed that they had a foundation. If you knew the history of the gangs, the history wouldn't change. And then it was just a matter of how that gets applied to the tattoo. No matter how random the tattoo is, sometimes it will have parts of the gang's history that is specific to that culture, to that specific set even. So same thing here. The game of inmate manipulation has evolved. There's a lot more interaction with staff than there ever was before, right? Mm-hmm. But it's going to have the same foundation, which is going to be control. That's not going to shift. That's not going to change. So no matter how far the game evolves, remember the root. And that should be able to get you through whatever it is that you need to identify, because the root is strong. Without the root, there is no evolution. So I think for me, same thing with the gangs. It was crazy how I was able to piece it together, because when you were saying that, gangs came to my head, and I was trying to piece of where'd that come from. But it's true. I hold on to the root, so no matter how far something goes, I still have something I can hold on to. And if I know the root well, I'm able to place it, because it all has the same origins. Hey, Connie, have anything you want to say in closing?
I just want to say to folks out there, just to be careful out there. You just understand that, thinking about the end really isn't necessarily where you're going to protect yourself. Yeah, we're not going to bring in drugs. I'm not going to bring in whatever these, a cell phone or whatever it is the inmate's looking for. But I think just staying on your toes and knowing that we can't take for granted some of those requests that seem like harmless. We just can't.
Right. Obviously, it's a great dialogue. I think this was a dialogue that, again, we didn't prepare. And I actually think I got a couple of things I can actually add that we could explore. And again, it just comes from having this dialogue with you where we challenge each other. We don't repeat the same things. We up it each time we go back and forth. And again, I was a little worried at the beginning. I thought you were going to totally trash everything I said. But it was great that we're in agreement once again. Right. I love it. And I think that I'm actually going to wind up watching this video a few more times to get a little bit more of the dialogue that you motivated during this discussion. So I'm happy we had this. Hopefully people, they take these dialogues seriously. Again, it's about control, guys. This is a very important topic. So, all jokes aside, this was a very healthy discussion. Plus you got to see Sienna. She came in, made a sneak appearance, and you know what? I'm going to keep her because I would never want to edit the children out of my life. And on this note, Tear Talk, the sensitive side, is signing off. Bye, guys. And may my love for you. No, I'm joking. Bye, guys. Stay safe.